All right. So what are we talking about? Basically, healthy communication and also the art of like confrontation as well, because no matter what sphere of influence you guys go into, no matter where you're going to be fulfilling your legacy, and whether it's in ministry, whether God's taking you into business, whether God's taking you into politics, doesn't matter. Whether He's taking you into a career, you're going to have to interact and deal with people. You're going to have to learn how to build healthy connections. It's going to be crucial, especially if you're in business or anything where connections and business partners could make the difference in you doubling what you're doing or quadrupling what you're doing. I've seen God use that so many times. Partnerships can make a huge difference, and understanding healthy communication skills. We're going to need to know starting out from right now. So one of the things that I've noticed with just healthy communication, period, is I think sometimes people don't understand that if you have had any type of history to where there was unhealthy communication or toxic relationships, there's going to be some hole somewhere in your ability to communicate. It's going to flow over into different aspects of your life. People think, oh, it's just limited to that. Oh, well, maybe you grew up in a household where it was a single parent home, or you grew up in an abusive household, or you grew up in a household where there was just an unhealthy dynamic when it came to communication. Maybe people screamed at each other and yelled at each other, maybe even threw things at each other, right? So we think that just because we're Christians now and we've grown up as adults, that that was just that. Okay, so maybe I only have to deal with that when it comes to like my relationships, like maybe dating relationships. But that's not the case. That stuff spills over into every dynamic of relationship and human interaction that we have, whether that's in business, whether it's, especially if you're going to be in leadership. Okay, so this is part of the reason why we're talking about this, because as you guys find your legacy and what it is you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be impacting people's lives, which means you're going to be interacting with people. But you also have to be prepared as God begins to send people with interacting with them, because the enemy is also going to use people against you. Okay. And if we don't already have a healthy foundation of understanding how to confront something when something is not right, how to be able to season your tongue when you do confront something, how to be tactful in your communication techniques, and also how to powerfully connect, especially when you're connecting with people who could be potential partners in business and things like that. Because human interaction and connection is can make you or break you, and it can change the trajectory of your life. It really can. Okay, it can change your life for the better. It can also change your life for the horrible, just depending on how you deal with it. That's the reason why a lot of people have bosses that they don't like. Okay, and the bosses try to figure out why nobody likes them, because there's something unhealthy there that and this is the thing, as you grow and go up in leadership and you have more and more people under you and more and more people that you're interacting with, um, I guarantee you any insecurities that you have will come to the surface. Somebody is going to push your button. If you have more than one, somebody will push all of them. That's guaranteed. Okay, guaranteed. And you cannot be the boss cursing your employees out. You cannot be the leader of the ministry cursing the lay member out. You can't be the leader giving somebody a piece of your mind. So these things do flow over into different aspects of our lives. Which is why the reason why actually I have a relationship coach. I do. It doesn't sound like something that people need, but as you grow up and go up into leadership, you have to be able to learn how to stretch and continue to, even as you kind of like people talk about personal development, right? It's good to develop yourself, read books. It's great if you're reading books maybe pertaining to business, if you're a business person, to develop yourself in that area, but also growing ourselves in our communication skills is also going to be necessary as well. And I think sometimes people neglect that part of it. Okay, so if anybody's on here, maybe there's some of you who maybe didn't grow up in a perfect household. Maybe you had both parents and you had the perfect example of what a relationship should look like. Because the reason why I'm bringing up this type of relationship is because for most of us as children, the first relationship you see or experience as a child is going to be, of course, your relationship with your father and mother. Okay, that's going to be the very, very first one. Okay, this is usually the one where any type of deficiencies in your ability to communicate is going to be grounded in. It starts there first. Okay, so if you have a household where maybe that first interaction that child had was maybe there was only one parent, maybe it was a stressful period of time when they were born, maybe it was a situation where they weren't really wanted. Maybe the mother wasn't ready to get pregnant and she was contemplating an abortion. All of these little things that don't seem to have anything to do with the actual person, but even while they're coming into the world, all of these things open doors for different things. Or maybe that person, maybe as a baby, was abandoned, or maybe they had a parent die really, really early as a child. Or maybe they had something else traumatic, or maybe sexual abuse or something like that happened early as a child, which confused their relationship with what parent-child relationship is supposed to look like. So a lot of different things. You can have trauma, you can have confusion that can come in early on. You're gonna have an orphan spirit that comes in early on if you're abandoned in any way or you lose a parent. So many different things that can come in so early, so early that now as an adult we don't even realize, hey, that's affecting my communication, my ability to communicate with people. And sometimes those things are so deep that we don't even recognize how deep it is, especially things like rejection and different things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, just some healthy communication skills and how to recognize when your communication skills are unhealthy. Okay. How to recognize it. Number one of the easiest ways to recognize when your communication skills or is unhealthy is when you are easily offended. Okay, that's number one. So you're easily offended. That typically means that there are a lot of doors that, or just a lot of places in your life that you have not healed in, or a lot of traumatic things that you have gone through, or underlying things that basically the love of Christ has not completely come into to bring healing in. Okay. The easier it is for you to be offended, that just shows you that's the more how do I put it? The more buttons you have, basically. Just think about it. If you have a lot of triggers because you've had a lot of things happen, then you can have more buttons. So it's going to be easier, for people to get under your skin or get to you, or get you to, just act, like you're not supposed to be acting. So number one, I don't know if you guys want to take notes, but for those of you who are, number one, if you're easily offended, that's a way that you can tell if you have that unhealthy way to communicate. And then number two is when you are, and this is going to be like, y'all going to be like, what? Because that's most people. When you are afraid of confrontation. Okay. When you're afraid of confrontation, there's still some unhealthy communication things there that are underlying if you're still afraid of confrontation. And I think that's something that a lot of people, kind of already have an issue with. Like most people don't like having to confront anyone. Most people kind of just shy away from, confrontation. Now, granted, there are some people who like drama. So there's going to be, the few that are like, they just want drama, right? So they want confrontation. But even that's going to be unhealthy as well. That's just unhealthy on the other side of the spectrum. But for the most part, the average person does not like confrontation, does not enjoy confrontation. But unfortunately, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to have impact in people's lives, and you're going to have people around you in general, you're going to have to learn how to not love confrontation, but how to appreciate effective confrontation. Which I was going to talk about that, but just want you guys to get the three first basic things to look for, to know if to recognize if you have any unhealthy communication things going on in your triggers going on in you. Number one, I hope you guys are writing this down. Number one was that you're going to be easily offended. Number two is that you are going to be afraid to a certain extent of confrontation. And of course, as a leader, you really can't be afraid of confrontation because you're going to have to confront something at some point. Even if you're a boss at a job or you're a manager somewhere, you may have to fire somebody. Okay, that's not a good, that's not a good conversation. But it's, you're still probably going to have to confront whatever the person has done for them to be losing their job in a manner that's tactful. So that's kind of like a skill that most people do have to learn. The third thing or the third trigger that you're going to see or thing that you're going to notice in your life when there's unhealthy communication patterns or triggers still going on is that you're going to, trying to see how to put it, that I don't want to say there's going to be a lot of rejection, but I'll put it this way, where you won't be able to maintain healthy relationships. Put it that way. Okay. So I mean, that's going to be like all the way on the deep end there. So number one was you'll be easily offended. Number two, you will have a fear of confrontation. And number three, that you won't be able to maintain a lot of healthy relationships. So those are the three things so that we're going to notice. Now, again, when it comes to in the things of God, especially for those of you who are fasting right now, going on this fasting journey with us, as you guys are going through this fasting and preparing for the legacy that you're going to be leaving in the earth, I notice that this is one of the things that God deals with. And it may seem like, well, why would God even be, dealing with that? But he knows that if he doesn't deal with those things now, then what's going to happen is when he starts sending you the connections that's going to be necessary, for you to walk out the purpose that you have for your life, you may squander some of those relationships. Okay, because understand the enemy is always going to try to come in. And if he comes in and you don't know how to navigate that, you can lose some very, very good connections, business partnerships, or even friendships that could have just opened doors for you that you wouldn't imagine. One of the things that I've noticed that the enemy fights also is this area in our lives. Okay, because the first thing, remember, he will come after is wasting your time and taking up a lot of your time. Now, next thing he's going to go after the time issue is going to be connections, because he knows how integral connections can be. One connection, one right connection can change everything in your life. Just one. Literally. One. Okay, think about Joseph. He's been sitting in jail all of these years, and he gets to the point what the Bible is really talking about when it says, that when you finally get to your due season, he gets to his due season. King has a dream, and he is in position, and just that one connection of going and telling him what the dream means and what God is intending to do, he goes from prison to, hey, since you know what you're talking about, why don't you be the one to implement it, Prime Minister? Okay, one connection can change the trajectory of your life. And from what I've seen in our books in heaven, everybody has in your books in heaven, in order for you to reach that destiny that God has for your life, in order for you to leave that legacy that you're supposed to leave, there are integral connections necessary for you to do it. Okay, even Jesus, he had to encounter the 12 disciples. Every single human being on this earth. There is nothing that you're put down here to do what that you can just magically do it by yourself. And you're not going to need anybody. There are people that are going to be integral in your life, and the enemy is going to try to come after those connections. So it's important to already know and have healthy communication skills, and then also healthy understanding how to be able to build powerful connections quickly when you meet and connect with people, because you never know who may be your next connection. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk a little bit about, now that you guys have the three things to look for to know when you do have, unhealthy communication issues, will be the first one. So the first one we said was you're going to be offended quickly. If you find yourself easily offended, that was the first trigger to look for. Now, if you find yourself in that place where you are dealing with that, and you're like, you know what, patience, I do notice that I am easily offended. Somebody could just really be talking about a specific thing that I did and not even necessarily be, coming against me directly, but for some reason, I'm just easily offended or whatever. So typically when you see that, there are going to be specific things. If you stop actually, whenever you get offended, this is the first thing. If you will pause and just really think deeply as to what it is, what was the trigger? Okay. Let's say, let me just, make an example. Let's say Loreni says she wakes up today. Well, she says she comes on to the class today, and she says, I don't know, trying to find something that we can kind of all connect with. And let's say she says, well, I'm upset today because I don't know, Patience, you said something that made me feel bad. Okay. So granted, she didn't say anything bad, right? She just said I said something that made her feel bad. Now, right there, it should be impossible for anybody to get offended just from that. Why? Because there aren't any details yet. Okay. Yes, I may have said something that made her feel bad, but I don't know if maybe I was just saying something that I or say every day, but just because maybe she went through something else earlier that day that triggered something, maybe that's why I made her feel bad. So there's not even enough details yet. Okay. There's still not even enough details yet for somebody to get offended from that. So if you find yourself getting offended at things that are not even like deep, but it's just the way that it sounded that made you get offended, then usually you are dealing with a spirit of rejection. Okay. Let's just pay attention to that. If there's not enough details in what the person said, but a lot of times it was just the way that it came off, it could, for the most part, a lot of times it's a spirit of rejection. And then another spirit that works very, very closely with the spirit of rejection is going to be the spirit of anxiety and the fear of man. Okay. So whenever you see those three, a lot of times roll together. You'll see rejection there. You'll see anxiety there. You'll see the fear of man. And really, it's basically you get the person getting anxious about why a person feels this way or why a person thinks this way. And sometimes it won't even be a situation where the person really thinks that. But the minute you hear something that sounds off, you start getting these other thoughts as to, well, they meant it this way or they meant it that way, even though there's not any other details yet for you to really be able to know that for sure. It's like those spirits will try to start to fill in the blanks for you. It's like, oh well, they said hi to me like this because of that. Well, their text messages were just shorter because yeah, they're still upset about me at me, or maybe I see them over there, having a conversation, and they're looking over here. They must be talking about me, and half the time it's not even that. Um, so the first one, guys, if you're dealing with the getting offended, start paying attention. I want you guys already have journals in this class, but for those on YouTube, if you don't have journals, I would recommend that you get journals, and start paying attention to figuring out what your triggers are. I did do a video that you can kind of go into more detail because I have to try to cover all three in a short time here. I did go into a video that where I talked about I believe it was the art of confrontation. But then I also talk about how to deactivate your buttons. Okay. So for those of you who are dealing with that first one where you find yourself easily offended, watch that video. On my YouTube channel. It's called Deactivate Your Buttons. Basically not letting people push you around. So that video is going to go into a lot more detail on how to deal with those triggers, and completely eliminate those triggers. Second thing, trigger that I said, how many of you have it written down? Who has the three things written down so far? Okay, Jayla, you have it written down. You can unmute yourself. What was the second thing? What was the second?
The second thing is afraid of confrontation.
Okay, so the fear of confrontation. All right, so that's going to be the next one that we're going to go into. So for the fear of confrontation, that one I also did a video on that too, and that one was called, I think it was called effective confrontation or communication or something like that. This one, I think somebody you can actually take time and learn how to do. This is not even something that really. Oh, and then this is another thing. For those of you who grew up in situations where there was a lot of maybe households where there was a lot of like fighting or arguing, a lot of times the reason why we are afraid of the confrontation is because our view of what confrontation is negative. Okay, especially if you grew up in around like an abusive environment, or just an environment maybe where people were violent, or in an environment that was abusive, or just an environment where you saw maybe one person always maybe being overly overbearing towards the other person, especially if it was like your parents or in that type of place. Naturally speaking, your outlook on confrontation is going to be negative, because when you think about confrontation, you're thinking that. Okay, you're thinking somebody arguing, you're thinking somebody screaming at each other, you're thinking, somebody hitting someone, you're thinking, just whatever you grew up with, because in your mind, that's what you have experienced, when it comes to confrontation. So I think the first part of healthy confrontation is shifting that understanding to understanding that the purpose of confrontation is solution. Okay, the purpose of confrontation is solution. It's not to degrade another person. It's not to make somebody feel bad. It's not to make them feel like you're right and they were wrong. It's solution. And if you confront a situation the right way, then you're getting a solution that fits both people and is the best for both people. Okay. For example, let's say confrontation in regards to a business. Maybe an employee realizes, I want to do some different things in my life. Maybe this job is taking up a lot of my time. I'm not spending as much time with my kids as I want to. So I'm going to go tell my boss, hey, I'm putting in a 2-week notice. Okay. So that situation, they go in, they sit down with the boss, and the boss is like, well, we know the company's been really good to you. Why are you leaving? So that's a situation where confrontation essentially is a good thing. Okay, that you have this issue. This job is not a good fit for me anymore. I'm not really, feeling settled with it. I need to do some other things in my life, so I have to go and put a resignation in. Okay. So we have to view confrontation like that. Like, okay, there's something off here, and all I'm doing is addressing it. Okay, it's not attacking, it's addressing it, so that we can have the best solution for both me and this person. So let's say it's a situation where you are the leader, and there's maybe one person there that let's say every time you say something or recommend something, that person always shoots it down. Okay. And you're the leader. And you're wondering, well, what's going on here? Did it just maybe they don't like me? Maybe they're just undermining my authority. Maybe they don't respect me. Okay. So because all these things, pride is gonna put all this stuff in your head, right? And that's just human beings. So that continues to happen. And of course, if you're recognizing that, at some point you need to have a conversation with this person privately, not in front of everybody. After they shoot you down, you go off and say, oh, you always shoot me down. That's not the way to go about it. You pull them to the side and say, hey, I noticed that it seems like, every time I bring up something, it seems like you shoot it down. Now granted, there are some people, and this, you're going to know the difference, right? Because if that's just the person's personality, that whenever somebody brings up something, they shoot it down, regardless of whether it's you or not, then you should know, hey, that's just how they are. But if that's not the case, at some point you're going to have that conversation with them and have a way that you healthily confront that. So I want to do some real life action role play. Who wants to be my two volunteers?
I will, Patience.
Okay, who wants to go with Dave? Who wants to go against Dave? We need two people.
I'll go Patience.
Okay. All right. So let's say Tanisha, you're the leader. So Tanisha, you're the leader, and you've noticed that. Well, go on mute for a second, Tanisha.
Okay.
Let's say you notice that every time you bring up an idea or something for the organization or the ministry, Dave always shuts it down. He says, I don't think that's a good idea. And now you're about to have a conversation with Dave to just to figure out why, without getting into your emotions, without, feeling like maybe he doesn't like me. How would you go about this conversation?
Hi, Dave. So we had a few meetings about how we could better manage our time. And the last three meetings, I've been bringing up some really good ideas that I think that will really help the company. And every time I bring forth my idea, I notice that you say, but you never really expound on it. Like it seems like you never take my ideas into consideration, and it feels like I'm getting brushed off. And I really wanted to speak to you to talk to you about how I'm feeling. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think the situation, how we could better the situation between us, because it's beginning to make me feel like my ideas don't matter. I don't feel very good. So I was wondering how we could go about handling this.
Oh, I didn't know you felt that way, Nisha. I had a lot going on in my mind. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought it to my attention, because sometimes, I could be a little brash. I want things done a certain way, my way, and I wasn't aware that this was going on. So I apologize about that.
Thank you very much. I do admit that I was really thinking about myself, and I didn't think that maybe that you had something going on in your life. So I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad that you brought it to my attention. Like I said, I didn't know that I was actually doing that. So now you can do things subconsciously and not aware that you're actually doing that unless somebody brings it to your attention. So I'm glad that you made me aware of that. So the next time I'll be more cognizant of the situation. So thank you
Okay.
again, teacher.
Yeah, no problem, Dave. So do you mind if I just I still remember the ideas that I have. So do you mind if I jot them down in an email and send it over to you?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now.
All right.
All right, what y'all think? Yeah, you think she handled it very well as a
Well
leader?
done.
Yes, I think it was very well done.
Okay.
Patience.
Uh-huh. And any
This is actually
uh
not funny, but I know that God is talking to me right now because is going on in my life right now. So even with my husband, I will have this perception, even with the way he says things, I will feel like somebody's saying something other than what they're actually saying. And it has been something I've dealt with for a very long time. And God is not actually telling me that I have to deal with it, because if he's going to bring me to new levels, I cannot have the spirit of offense and rejection lagging behind me, because the enemy is going to use it, because he knows if I'm really truly healed or not. And if I'm not healed, then he's going to specifically send people my way to get me purposely offended so I can go into a hole or shut people out like he wants me to.
exactly. So, and I have seen people actually disconnect from people who would have been a blessing to them. You know what I'm saying? Because God
Right.
brings everybody into our life for a reason. Whether it's something that maybe they're supposed to bring out something in you so that you can recognize it's there and repent, or even if it's something where that person is supposed to add to your life, or maybe even over time in that relationship, that person could be a blessing to you. You never know why you meet people, and it's important to value the relationships that we have, because remember I said our relationships are one of the most powerful assets that we have. Literally, the people that you have around you and the connections that you have are more important than any other relationship, than any other thing, even if it's, because even if you don't have, let's say a lot of money, the connections can give you that. You see what I'm saying? It can open doors, just unlimited doors, because we never know what God's going to do in somebody's life. And it's important too that you recognize. And when we start really paying attention to it, you will recognize stuff like that, where you notice, wait a minute, the husband might say something to you, and it's like, well, he didn't really say that. Where's this other thought coming from? You see what I'm saying? Or somebody will say something to you in a certain way, and they'll be like, well, why did they say it that way? They must be thinking this to say it that way. You don't even know. It's like, what is this thought? What are these other background? If you're still getting all those little background thoughts about, well, this morning he said, good morning, darling. But then today he just said good morning, right? And now the mind is going, well, maybe the reason why he didn't call me darling this morning is he upset about something? It's like all of this stuff. If you're still getting all of those other thoughts, there's something there. You're still getting all the other little thoughts that have nothing, that don't warrant what is actually happening. Now, don't get me wrong. Just naturally, even as women, we're naturally just analyzers. We'll analyze stuff in a way that's just a little bit deeper than men, because women tend to pay more attention to detail. So naturally, we do that. But if you're getting like the other extra thoughts that are not if you start paying attention to that, you'll recognize what spirit is working. And also being, and this is where we will be seeking the Lord and asking Him to get free from the fear of man. Okay, because I think I will have to go deeper into this. So maybe we might have to cut this in half for today, and I could do maybe a second half tomorrow on this, where we can go into talking about being free from the fear of man, being free from the spirit of rejection, and then being free from just fear, period. We're going to go a little bit deeper into it, because there's no way I'm going to cover all of it, all of it today. Because just being free from the fear of man in itself, that may be a video by itself. And then the spirit of rejection is a whole nother video in itself. But when you have those two things working, you're going to find yourself getting those extra thoughts that were not even in what the person said, which is the reason why text messages can be so dangerous too, right? Because somebody will say something in the text message, and it's like, why they saying it that tone? Why are you screaming at me? Right? Because they may use bold letters. And it's like, there is no tone in the text message. It's just letters. Right? There's no tone in the text message, y'all. I've literally had people like, why are you saying like that? Like it's just a text. Did you hear my voice? There's no tone in the text. It's just words. It's our own perception that adds a tone to it. That's how much how powerful our minds are, yo. Your mind will add a tone to it It would add their voice to it. It would add them screaming to it. And they didn't even do that. It's just words. And so at the end of the day, when we get deliverance from these other things, it allows us to be able to just rest in who we are and rest in real, authentic relationships and conversations, without adding our own, all these having these other spirits speaking into our ear, and adding all these different things that cause us to have unhealthy reactions to it. So I'm going to end on that part for the recording for today. And then tomorrow we'll do the other half, out people. And as I said earlier, even for some of the things that God has promised us, even for some of the promises of God, to come to pass, you need people. Okay. For you to receive after you give, you need people. That's why the scripture says, that when you give, it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, shall men give unto your bosom. So even for that scripture to be fulfilled, we need to have people in our lives. Same thing with the favor of God. The favor of God itself is null and void without people. Okay, because God can't show you favor. He can show you favor and do supernatural things for you, but for the most part, it's going to be people that He uses to show you that favor, to give you access, to some of the things that He wants to give you. And the three main things that we need to write down that are going to be integral for us to be able to walk out, and leave the legacy that God has for our lives. Not only do we need to have and be able to communicate effectively, because people are going to be a great part of it, but there's also going to be also two other elements, even though people are probably going to be one of the most important. Number one, when God is bringing you into that place where He is about to, bring you into alignment with where you need to be to fulfill your purpose and leave a legacy, He's going to make sure the timing is right. So the time is going to be important. You're going to have to be in the right place. So there is a due season, which is the time, and then there is a blessed place, which is the place, and then after that, then there's going to be the people, that are going to be necessary for you to come into contact with you, for you to be able to fulfill that purpose. So people are always going to be very, very important. And if we don't have healthy communication skills, then we're not going to know how to build strong relationships with people, maintain those relationships with people, to be able to do and accomplish what God has given us to do. Okay, so I'm going to start in Timothy here, 2 Timothy 3:16. And this is just looking at it from a biblical perspective. What exactly is God's idea of healthy communication? How does He want us, to be able to communicate? Of course, we have our own idea of what it is, but what is His? Okay, so 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17 says, all scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work. One of the things that I noticed in this scripture is it says that all scripture is breathed out by God and is profitable. It says it's profitable for teaching, correction, reproof, training, and all of that, which means from God's perspective, correction, reproof, and training are all profitable things. Okay, now typically speaking, when we look at from a communication perspective, most people are going to be afraid of correction, okay, or afraid to verbally bring any type of correction to somebody else. They're just kind of afraid of that conversation in itself, because it we have a negative connotation when we think about somebody bringing us correction or reproof. But in the Bible here in 2 Timothy 3:16, God sees reproof and correction as profitable things. Okay, so He sees it as profitable communication. So that's one of the things that we're talking about. So in regards to correction, reproof, training, these things, I think when we change our perspective about them and realize that they're not negative things, then it makes it easier for us to know, hey, this is a part of healthy communication. Because if we don't understand that correction, reproof, are a part of healthy communication, even from God's perspective, then we're always going to look at it as a negative thing. So that way, let's, for example, say when somebody is, um, let's say even in a female male relationship or marriage or something like that. I had a friend of mine, and he would tell me, we had to learn how to effectively communicate, in the sense that, because she was saying that, she was like, because I had a negative connotation towards any type of correction. She was like, anytime her husband would say something, um, just it wasn't even like it wouldn't even have to be like a thing of where he was actually bringing correction. It would just be maybe something that he would prefer she did it a different way. And when he would have a conversation with her about it, she said she would shut down and just start crying and stuff, because in her mind, she took that as a negative thing. So in that sense, we're not able to take healthy or constructive criticism, essentially. So if you're saying in your life that you're not able to take constructive criticism, okay, this could be an indication also of, just that unhealthy um, communication, um, basically unhealthy communication, things that are still lingering that you have not been healed from. So it's good to see here in the Word of God, because I think a lot of times we don't realize that communication and how to communicate, God actually cares about that. And there are actually some scriptures in here pertaining to that. And one that I really, really like is 1 Timothy 2:1-4, where it says, first of all, then I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. That is good, and it is pleasing in the sight of our Savior, who desires all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. One of the key things in this text is the fact that it says that God is pleased when we lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. Okay? Peaceful, quiet life that's godly and dignified in every way. It's going to be really, really hard to live a peaceful life if we don't learn how to maintain a peaceful atmosphere. And maintaining a peaceful atmosphere also comes with healthy communication. Okay. And that goes and flows into every aspect of your life, not just a peaceful atmosphere like in your home, but everywhere. Because think about it. How many of you guys work at a job? You don't have to answer this. This is just me asking for those who are going to be watching on YouTube. Think about it. If you work in a job where there's a toxic environment, it's a toxic environment because there's unhealthy communication. And when you have unhealthy communication, it's going to create an unhealthy environment and unhealthy vibes within the environment. And that just goes all across the board for every type of relationship, whether it's a boss-employee relationship, whether it's a parent-child relationship, whether it's a relationship like a marriage relationship, or a mentor-mentee relationship. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is. Human beings have to learn how to communicate effectively. Otherwise, we cannot have a peaceful atmosphere and maintain a peaceful, quiet life like that God is talking about here, that is godly and dignified in every way. Okay, and it's interesting that the Bible talks about being godly and dignified in every way. Because when we think about even the word dignified, okay, there are times when you could be in a situation where somebody may say something that's off to you, and you have to recognize that sometimes you don't even need to dignify that what they said with a response. Okay, sometimes we just get all undignified and go off on people, give them a piece of our mind and all of this stuff. That's what this means when it's talking about the quiet life, peaceful quiet life, and it's dignified in every way. When you allow somebody to push your buttons, that you're acting undignified, then you have just given them your power, essentially. So all of these things are indications of just unhealthy habits in communication. When we're yelling, screaming, going off on people, allowing people to push you into a place that you would act undignified, allowing people to push you into a place where your atmosphere now is no longer a peaceful and quiet one. This is something that a peaceful and quiet atmosphere is something that is a result or a fruit of learning how to have healthy communication for the most part. Okay, because I've also seen the unhealthy side, to where people just avoid communication at all because they don't want to have any confrontation. So that could be unhealthy as well too. And sometimes that peaceful atmosphere could just be there because nobody's talking, which still wouldn't really be peaceful, because you will still have that thickness of, whatever, tension in the air. So either way, it still would be peaceful even if you're not talking. So any of these unhealthy habits would cause you to not have what the Bible is saying that we should have here. All right. So one of the main ways to make sure that we are able to maintain that peaceful and quiet environment, I know for me, like the most important thing to me ever is having a peaceful atmosphere. I cannot be in a place that is not peaceful. I will leave. I would rather leave than be in an atmosphere that's not peaceful. And I try to bring a peaceful atmosphere with me wherever I go, especially when you're talking about like at home. Yeah. If you can go on mute,
Benjamin's
Tanisha.
eyes furrowed as he looked right into my eyes.
Okay, thank you. So, because I know for me, if my home, first of all, is my sanctuary. So if I'm coming into a certain atmosphere and I'm coming home to that atmosphere, it has to be peaceful. Okay, I get enough warfare and stuff going on that when I come home, I need to be able to take my armor off and be in a peaceful atmosphere where the peace and the presence of God dwells. And that should be all of us. I mean, as as members of the body of Christ, and sons of God, your home environment should be a place that can be a sanctuary, a place where the Holy Spirit can dwell and God can dwell. And that's the reason why, the scriptures was saying, or God was basically saying, like, who's going to build a house for me? Who's going to create an atmosphere where I can actually dwell in the earth with them? And that's going to come along with learning how to have and maintain a peaceful, quiet atmosphere, where the peace and the presence of God can dwell, and where you are able to operate in a godly and dignified way. Okay, so this is key here, guys. So one of the first things I think we talked about a little bit was, one of the ways to maintain that is to try to never assume the worst. If you guys want to write down some of these things, it's going to come in handy for learning how to effectively communicate to maintain healthy relationships. Whether that's you as a leader in leadership, whether you're the boss, whether you're the manager, whether you're the pastor, whether you're the mentor and the person that's a mentee, doesn't matter. If you learn these main things, to not do these things and start paying attention to not doing these things, you will be able to cultivate a peaceful, quiet environment that's dignified. One of the first things is to never assume the worst. Never assume the worst. And now, a lot of times, people will say stuff like, "Well, actions speak louder than words." So if they're showing me the worst, then I should automatically assume the worst. Okay, that thought pattern is unhealthy, because you don't know why they're showing you that behavior. And until you've actually communicated with them effectively to know it's unfair for you to come to that conclusion. Number two is to never assume someone's intentions are bad. This is another thing that we do. Okay, it's like, well, here we go again. Actions speak louder than words. So based on what they've done, this thing that they did hurt me. So because it hurt me, well, they must have been trying to hurt me. Okay. But until we've actually sat down and had a conversation with that person, looked at things from their perspective, you don't really know that for sure. So never automatically assume that someone's intentions are bad. And this is one of the examples that we talked about yesterday. Actually, guys, I was in was dating this guy, and I would, whenever I've always been in business and stuff. So I would be trying to do stuff or accomplish stuff. And every time I would try to do something and talk to him about it, he would say negative things to me. Okay. So now, of course, growing up in a home where I didn't really get a lot of support with my endeavors, I didn't take that too well. Okay. That was number one. That was a trigger for me back then, before I'd healed in that area, because it was like, okay, I already haven't gotten support from everybody else in my life. I don't want the person that I'm with to be a naysayer. Okay. Especially if you don't want a dream killer. You don't want to be with somebody who's a dream killer when you're somebody who's building and trying to accomplish things. So I could have easily assumed. And of course, when I talk to friends about it, of course, when you talk to people who are like, don't understand these things, they're going to give you bad advice because they're going to go based off what they're seeing. Well, if the person's giving you, anytime you're trying to do or accomplish something and they're telling you can't do it, then, they're just a naysayer. You need to get all the naysayers out of your life. And that's what most people will tell you, because if you look at the action of what the person is doing, it looks like they're not for you, because what they're doing is a bad thing. Looking at it from the outside. But then when I actually sat down and had a conversation with him, this is the thing. I made sure I didn't assume that his intention was wrong. So we sat and actually had a conversation about it. I'm like, okay, you do realize that it hurts me every time I, try to do something and it doesn't feel like you're supportive. It seems like you're against me, in a sense. But when I actually talked to him, he let me know that he grew up in a household where that's how he was motivated. Because he was motivated when he would say he was trying to do something and somebody told him he couldn't do it, he said it would motivate him to go even harder and do it. So, and that's just the environment that he grew up in. So he thought that by telling me something negative, that it would actually be motivating me. So his intention wasn't to, look like he wasn't supportive. His intention was actually to motivate me by saying the negative thing in his mind, right? So again, his intention was not wrong, even though all the actions looked off. Okay. But if I had never had that conversation, I could have just put him in a category with, those are just another naysayer. But once he understood that, he was able to change that behavior, because he knew, okay, this doesn't work. this is not going to work for her, because it does not make her feel the way that I think or I assume that it would, because that's what works for me. Okay. So again, never assume someone's intentions are bad just because the actions seem bad. Number 3, give people the opportunity to show you who they are. Okay. And this could go either for good or bad. Give people the opportunity to show you who they are. Never just, oh, well, let's say I just met Tiffany, right? But I've heard some stuff about Tiffany from some other folks. So now I'm judging Tiffany, even though I just met her, off of what I've heard about her. That's one thing that we do most of the time. Now, granted, if you're going to like go do business with Tiffany, right, and somebody else has, you probably want to get, just find out how that went. But I'm talking about, just character traits and things like that. Because you never know what that other person's experience really was with that person. So make sure you're giving people the opportunity to actually show you and have a fresh and clean encounter with you without you clouding that with preconceived notions that you've gotten from somewhere else. That's very, very unhealthy to do. Most people do it though. Next thing on the list to pay attention to make sure we're having healthy communication and maintaining that peaceful atmosphere is allow people to make mistakes without every single thing they do being a fatal thing where you're ready to cut them off. Okay, this is another one. We're like, okay, well, you said allow people to show you who they are. They showed me who they are, deuces. Okay, I could have done that in that situation where, he was telling me negative things. I could have automatically assumed, well, he showed me who he is. He's a naysayer, deuces. But I have to remember, okay, we give people the opportunity to make mistakes and make sure you have a conversation with them if they do, do something that offends you. Okay. So now I'm going to go back and open it up now for us to start having some conversation here. So, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have noticed that you've done a lot of these things that I just said. So, how many of you have been in situations where you have automatically assumed the worst? Anybody on here? How many of you have automatically assumed the worst? Mm-hmm.
I met a friend, a new male friend, and I'm automatically assuming that he's maybe an abuser, serial killer. Like I just assume the worst about him all the way around.
Okay. Now,
I-
granted, we do live in a crazy world, okay, where there's human trafficking, and there are a lot of people out here who don't mean you any good, which is why we do need to use discernment. But does that feel healthy for you though? The
It
fact
does.
that you assume that?
It really doesn't. Honestly, like he invited her to his church, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, but I'm thinking like, there's evil people in church, and I'm just assuming the worst about every single thing, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't sit well with me that I think this way.
Okay. And that's a good point that you bring up. What's the number one reason why people automatically assume the worst? Who can tell me? What's the number one reason why we typically assume the worst? It's usually some type of past experience, right?
Right. Past hurt.
Past experience and past trauma. And it's not fair to this new person that's standing in front of you to bring your past hurt and experience into this, right? We do that in every type of relationship, right? Because, well, the last relationship you were in, that he cheated. Okay, so I didn't hear from him for a day. Well, he must automatically be doing something. He could have just been busy. I'm just saying, right? So we automatically assume, based on what we've experienced before, that something is the worst. Or maybe you're even in a mentor-mentee type of relationship, pastor member relationship. Okay, maybe you come from a church where maybe you were taken advantage of by a pastor. So now, anytime maybe your pastor says, oh, well, it's time to give, it's a trigger. Well, all these pastors just want your money, right? So, again, every time you find yourself just automatically assuming the worst, pause and ask yourself, why am I assuming this? Okay, if the person has not done anything, okay, because typically they have not. If they haven't done anything and you're automatically just assuming something, and it's like your first encounter or experience with this person, there has to be something else that's going on here. And a lot of times we don't take the time to pause to pay attention to these things. Guys, one of the most powerful things that we can do is spend enough time with ourselves to really know who we are. If we pause a lot of times and start paying attention to the things that we do and really sit and wonder and think about, why am I doing this? And then if you see something unhealthy, ask the Lord to show you. You can overcome so many things, and God can begin to peel off so many different layers of unhealthy habits, of just unhealthy thought patterns. because this is where transformation happens, guys. It happens in these deep places where we are peeling these layers off. We're transformed by the renewing of our minds. And the renewing of your mind happens when we don't just say, oh, well, that's just how I am. I just respond negatively to whenever somebody does this. No, say you can heal in these different areas. You can see progress in these different areas. You just have to pause, pay attention to what you're doing, and start asking yourself, well, why am I responding this way? Lord, show me what it is. Let's deal with this. But we have to make sure we're spending enough time with ourselves to really know who we are. Because if you don't spend enough time to really know who you are, then you're not even really going to be able to have the impact fully that you're supposed to have, and the influence that God wants to use you to have in the lives of others, especially if you are a leader or if you're going into any type of leadership. If you don't know who you are fully, then you're not even going to know what you like and what you don't like to really be able to know how to navigate a lot of these situations. So it's key. And even if you are an extrovert and you know kind of you draw your energy from being around a lot of people, great. But make sure you're still paying attention to your actions, so that we're able to pick up these triggers, and allow the Lord to work on us in these different areas. Tanisha, why do you think that you automatically assume the worst about this person? Did you have anything happen in your past? What do you think? Oh,
Yes.
you did? Okay. Anybody
Um,
else? Go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of it stems from um my abuse when I was a foster child.
Mhm.
I realized that's where a lot of my triggers stem from. So I'm still healing from those things. And I noticed when you said, like, if one person does one thing, I'm ready to be out. That's me. And I'm realizing I didn't even realize it was unhealthy until you just said it.
Mhm. Yep. I mean, I used to do that a long time ago. It's like one mistake, drop you like a hot cake, but you can't do that because you make mistakes too. You know what I'm saying? Like we're all human, and not only that, especially when you just met someone in your first interactions with them. Like I said, like that example with me, and my ex, he grew up in a completely different environment where he thought certain things were positive that I viewed as negative, right? So a lot of times when you're first meeting somebody, you don't know all of those details yet. So you can't just automatically, because they did something that, they made a mistake or did something that you didn't like, just cut them off, because you haven't even had the opportunity to really even know, okay, what kind of background did they come from? Is this thing that they're doing that I assume to be negative actually something that maybe in their household that they grew up in is a positive thing? Okay, you have certain households where people grew up maybe in a household that they were huggers, right? So everybody wants a hug. And then you might, have somebody else that grew up in a household where, you probably heard "I love you" maybe once every 5 years, right? They just weren't affectionate like that. So now you may, get with this person, and because maybe they grew up in a place that wasn't very affectionate, just automatically assume, hey, they didn't really like you, and that wasn't even the case. For example, let's say, um, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be that deep. A lot of our internal things cause us to view and see people's um, reactions and things that people are doing as negative, sometimes even when it's not negative. Okay. For example, let's say a woman is going on a date. So she's trying to be cute, and she picks up some shoes that she really thought was cute. She put them on, and she goes on a date with this guy. But the whole time, the shoes are so uncomfortable, it's hurting her feet. Okay. So they get all the way to the end of the date, and she doesn't even realize that because her feet have been hurting, that she's been frowning through most of her date. Okay, they get to the end of the date, and the guy is assuming, well, she must not really like me because she's been frowning the whole time we've been on this date. Okay, so they go their separate ways. And because he assumes she must not really like him because she's been frowning, let's say he doesn't call her back for a second date. Okay, so something like that. Would he be justified in not calling her for the second date because he assumed that he didn't like her? That, she didn't like him.
He'd be assuming too.
Huh?
He'd be assuming, making
He,
assumptions.
he'd be assuming, right?
Yeah.
What would it be the right thing to do there on his part before just assuming and not calling her back?
He could just
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Ask her why you have that frown on your face.
Okay, so let's role play this one. Okay, so is Dave still on here?
I'm here.
Okay, so you're gonna be the guy. So let's say it's the end of the date. So you just called her that night after the date, because you're still trying to decide in your mind even if she likes you or not. You don't want to be rejected, so you kind of still a little nervous of how to go about it. But also you don't want to also assume either. Okay,
Right.
so Dave, you're gonna play the guy. Who wants to play the girl?
Don't worry, I don't bite. I promise.
But I mean, other than that, the date was good though. So who wants to play the girl?
So I can't assume anything. I just basically I got to be. I'm a little nervous or whatever.
Yeah. So basically, she was frowning her face the whole date. So you're not even sure how she feel about you. You don't even know
Right.
if she likes you like that. So you kind of nervous too because you don't want to be rejected.
Right.
But also you're trying to gauge whether you should ask her on the second date or not. Because obviously if she don't like you, ain't no point, right? But you're
Right.
not sure. You're not sure, but you're still calling her to, kind of get a feel for it. So who wants to be the girl? And then actually the girl is really feeling him, but she just didn't know her face was frowned up. Her feet were just hurting because she was trying to get
okay.
these wearing these cute shoes. But
The girl.
okay, so you be the girl. Okay, go ahead. The ring, the phone's ringing. He's calling you.
Hello.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing pretty good, Renisha. How did you like the date that we had the other day?
I thought it went really well. I really enjoyed myself. How about you?
I had a good time. Maybe we could do it another next Saturday if you're not busy.
Sure.
Okay,
But I thought he was supposed to inquire about. I thought you were supposed about this frown, permanent frown.
Yeah, you got to inquire, Dave. Just maybe ask her, like, "Hey,
okay.
I noticed that you didn't seem very comfortable. Were you okay on during the date?"
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I noticed when we was together, you had like a look, like you felt very uncomfortable. Is everything okay?
Oh yes, Dave. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that it was being expressed that way. I had these shoes that I just got because I wanted to look good for you, and they were really tight and hurting my feet. I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Then I mean that cleared up any confusion I might have. I actually thought maybe you were into, you didn't like how the date was going.
Oh no. I had a great time. So and I look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
No problem.
Okay. How y'all think they did?
They did wonderful.
We talked
Thank
hard.
you for reminding him, though.
Huh?
Yeah.
Dave got a second date.
But that's the thing, though. The guys are not as intuitive as that. Okay, guys. Just so we know, like, and they're most of the time they're not just gonna come up front and I don't know, and ask if she looked maybe I like the way like you asked about her looking uncomfortable, but if her face was frowned up, it'd be kind of hard to just be like, oh, I noticed your face was frowned up the whole time.
Yeah.
Especially if he's internalized that as maybe she just wasn't feeling him like that.
Yeah, but a lot of guys not gonna do that though. They just want to see if they can get another date.
You think so?
A lot of them will. A lot of guys,
Even
man. I'm
even
not.
if
You
her
may
face
have
was
some that's like that, but not all of them.
even if her face was frowned up the whole time?
There's some, believe it or not, patient. There's some people, some guys that they're very ignorant to that, man. They won't even think about that.
Okay, so basically they just well then I guess they just have other intentions then.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But then you have some guys that's really, really legitimate, want a relationship, so they look at little things like that, and then they'll start to internalize. Okay, she didn't look too happy. Her face, she was frowning. So I mean, did she like me? Did
But they
she
wouldn't
not
ask.
like the?
They wouldn't ask.
No, they will
Yeah,
internalize it though.
right. But they
That
wouldn't turn.
that they will do.
Okay. So essentially speaking, if he was just, trying to get in her pants or whatever, and then he wouldn't even really care to ask before
Mhm.
asking for the second date. Is that what you're saying, Dave?
Yes, because there's people that I know that does that. That's why I know it real well because they will not. But those are what you call whoremongers. So they can care less what their faces look like, man. They just no, that's
Okay.
what they are. You know.
Okay. So let's translate this to another type of relationship. Okay, not like a girl boy relationship or whatever. Um, let's say a corporate environment where maybe the same thing happens, but the only difference is this time, Tanisha is a businesswoman who is interested in investing in a venture that Dave has. Okay, so let's say Dave, there's a business that you've been wanting to start. This woman, is an influential woman. She has, some capital that she wants to invest. And during the whole meeting, her face is frowned for the same reason, right? But you don't know that. So you're thinking, well, maybe she just didn't like the idea. Maybe she really is not trying to invest in it like that. Um, yeah. So how would that conversation go? Who wants to role play for this one?
That's a tough one, patient, because I would have to say, okay, you're not too happy with my idea, so I would want to know what's going on.
Yeah, but number one, if we're looking, because now you guys have to have this stuff written down. So when you have these interactions, because guys, remember, the next thing God is going to do is start bringing connections into your life. If you have these unhealthy communication habits, you can miss opportunities and connections with people and even investments because we're internalizing stuff and putting a negative connotation on it. Remember, rule number one, never assume the worst. Okay. So you have to have a conversation with her and dig a little bit deeper without assuming that she just didn't like your idea. So that's why we're role playing this, because now when we start having these interactions with people, we'll go back and look at these things and think, well, maybe I should talk to them again. Maybe it wasn't what I think it is. So we're not losing opportunity.
What if it's a man? What if it's it's a man who like you said, a work environment, and a woman is not sure if the man, how does a woman approach that situation?
If she, so let's say the woman is what? Let's say I'm the woman and I have a business idea or opportunity or something.
Yeah.
And I had a meeting with Dave.
Yeah.
And the whole time his face was frowned up. And so
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay. So let's actually role play it. Dave, you're going to be I'll be the woman who had the business idea or opportunity. But maybe his face was frowned up for a different reason. Maybe he just had a fight with his mother, right? And he just wasn't, feeling it today. And it had nothing to do with my business opportunity, right? All right, so let's actually role play it. So I'm calling you, Dave. Ring, ring, ring.
Hello, this is Dave Pinero Incorporate.
Hi, Dave. This is Patience. Just following up with you in regards to our meeting earlier today.
Oh, yes, patience.
Okay. So how did you like the business opportunity that I presented to you?
I mean, it was pretty decent. Um, I see some potential with it. I think you can help out business out a little bit. How come
Okay.
you asked?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I felt the meeting went pretty well. It just, you seemed a little bit not really there. You seemed a little bit distracted. So I wasn't really sure where you stood as far as, following through with the investment that I was seeking. Just wasn't sure where you stood there. Just wanted to kind of clarify where you did the numbers look good for you, or was there something else going on that
Oh,
I can fix?
oh, I'm sorry about that, patience. I had a bad headache. I've been having this headache all week, and it's like migraine. So I'm sorry if it appears that I look like I was out of it. But your
Okay.
business idea was good. It's just I usually have bouts with these headaches.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh, no
Hopefully
worries.
you're feeling much better now. Are you feeling better now?
I feel well. It's working. But I'm sorry for any confusion that might have caused you.
Okay. Well, that's good then. So then what do you think about this Friday, maybe scheduling something with your assistant so we can wrap everything up and get the contract signed? How do you feel about that?
Oh, we can do that. I mean, we could do that tomorrow.
All right, that sounds great. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye, patience.
All right, bye. Have a blessed day. Okay, how'd that go?
That went well. So essentially, you want us to be open to these possible newcomers, in our lives, and ask questions and communicate effectively, and not assume.
Not assume, because assuming can cause you to lose opportunities. You really can, because you never know what's going on with people. Did you guys write down the things to look out for and what to start paying attention to? So that you're able to start applying it and paying attention in your different interactions, whether it's at work, whether it's, in your personal relationships, or there is in your marriage. Write down those things to look out for. Number one, never assume the worst. Never assume someone's intentions are bad. Was number two. Give people the opportunity to show you who they are. And number three, allow people to make mistakes without making that every mistake that they make fatal and trying to cut them off. So those are the four main things. Who has them written down?
I do.
Okay. So if we start paying attention to those four things, and making a conscious effort to make sure we're not doing those things, you're going to start interacting with people a lot better.
I needed this the other day
What was the situation?
with my mom.
But it's
Because
okay. It's never too late. That's why we're working on this stuff right now. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording for today. We'll get into some more sweet stuff on here.